Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining. We'll just give it a few seconds to let more people in, as I can see the numbers are climbing in the list. So just another few seconds. Okay, I think we'll get started. So good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining our 2021 ASSC AGM, which hopefully will be relatively quick process, and then we can move on to some more interesting topics which should give us a bit of some thinking for the future. So I am going to get through some of the procedural bits at the start, and then hand over to others for the rest of this AGM part. My first piece is to give notice of the apologies that we received, which we have received 48 apologies, which thank you for those people who have sent that in. Second sort of procedural piece is the minutes for the 2020 last year's AGM, which was also a virtual AGM, if you remember. And we do need to get a proposer and a seconder for that. I think, yes, Melanie's popped up a poll to give us options to vote on the last year's minutes. So if you could tick whether you're happy to propose, then we can move on from that piece. Just give that a minute to for people to do that. All done, Melanie? Excellent, thank you very much. If anyone has any comments or questions or matters arising from last year's minutes, there is a Q&A button at the bottom of the webinar, the Zoom window. If you have any comments about last year's minutes specifically, please use that option to make a note. But also through the meeting, if anyone's got any questions or comments, please use that Q&A option, and the team will try and answer your questions as we go through. So I'm going to move on from that piece, but if there are any specific pieces, questions, then please let us know in that Q&A piece. There's nothing there yet. So I'm going to give a quick chairman's report for last year. I wrote this chairman's report, I guess about a month ago or so, and it's amazing how much has changed even in that time. So it's been a year of a lot of activity for the ASSC and for all of you as members. Of course, thinking back to the start of the year, or the first half of the year, to be honest, where COVID was, it still is obviously a big topic, but during those lockdowns and shutdowns, it was was the top of mind for everyone, especially those of us joining today whose properties were all shut and it was all looking rather bleak. Really, as it was the case last year during those sort of early pandemic days, I just can't thank the ASSC team enough for all of their support and hard work during that period. It's a huge amount of effort to deal with a huge amount of complexity and changes. If you remember, we had all sorts of difficulties of who could stay where and when things were opening and when things weren't, and cleaning needed to change, and all of that complexity was handled brilliantly by the Fiona, Eleanor, Melanie and Joyce with all that hard work. So really, really grateful again for that. This year, well, for the last certainly I think Fiona would say probably the last 5 years, the lobbying or the threat of government regulation has been a significant threat for several years. The last year or so, that's really come to a head, and in particular during 2021, where the Scottish government's sort of drive for short-term let licensing has come to a head several times, and that's really thanks to the huge amount of effort from the ASSC team again, that we've had some significant wins to try and to delay and now hopefully influence how that legislation will apply for our sector. And it's important to note that the ASSC is not against regulation. What we're against is unfair regulation or disproportionate regulation. And for some time now, we have offered alternative proposals for fair and proportionate registration scheme for our sector. And we seem to be gathering some momentum from politicians to hopefully influence the outcome of that process. So again, huge amount of work from the team, but also a huge amount of work from the members. Large numbers of you wrote to your MSPs and politicians to highlight issues with the legislation, and that sort of mass demonstration of support was really significant. So thank you to the members and the industry for really supporting our initiatives. It made a big difference and continues to do so. So that engagement with these lobbying campaigns is really important. So coming out from COVID, we talked about this last year, but this year our membership levels have remain at record levels. And this is fantastic news for us as an association, giving us much more weight as in all our lobbying activities, but also it has put pressure on our people and our systems. So this year, with some help from Visit Scotland, and also that increase in membership has helped us bring in specialist consultancy to redevelop our internal systems and websites, and you'll start to see more of that coming over the next few months as those improvements roll out. So a really good benefit of this growth has been the ability to invest it for the future, and therefore effectively spend more of our team spend more of their time helping you, the members, and less time trying to work on admin with some rather antiquated systems, which work perfectly well for a time, but completely out of the outdated now. Recently, you will have seen the self-catering volume and value study released, where which is a sort of update of a study, a significant update of a study that was done 5 years ago, but shows that self-catering's worth £867 million a year to the Scottish economy, supporting 24,000 full-time jobs. We are an industry, and you should be proud to be part of that significant industry. And that report has been useful, will continue to be useful in those as we try to represent the sector with politicians. Looking forward, 2021, or the second half of 2021, has seen a massive increase in domestic tourism, not just here in Scotland, throughout the UK and internationally, as international travel has been complicated. People have decided to holiday at home. The great news for us is that that's created additional demand for self-catering in particular. And certainly I do not see that changing significantly in 2022. I'm confident that the data already shows that we have very strong demand for self-catering here in Scotland next year. So we can all look forward to another year of strong demand. This is my, after I think something like 16 years, been on the committee and then board of the ASSC in the last year as the chair. I'm stepping down, well, now, but it's been a pleasure working with the ASSC over those years, and I look forward to continuing to work with the ASSC as a partner for business and a sponsor, and of course as a member. I'm really pleased to be handing the chair over to my co-board member, Adrienne Carmichael, who's been a fantastic help to me with various projects for the ASSC this year, and also has been an amazing help to Fiona and team, particularly on the lobbying side over the last 12 to 18 months. So really good news that Adrienne's taking that over, and looking forward to continuing participation as she takes things forward to the next phase. So that is my report. Any questions anyone has, feel free to use the Q&A. I can see some very complimentary comments going in there, which is echoed by, I'm sure, you all. So Melanie, I'm going to hand over to you for the next pieces of the AGM.
Thanks, Robert. So I think Fiona's now going to give her Chief Executive's report.
Morning all. Thanks very much, Mel. Thanks, Robert. And thanks again for the really supportive comments in the chat. We do really hugely appreciate it. I'm going to canter through a very brief synopsis of my Chief Exec's report. The full version will be on the website later today, so do take a look at it because it's quite detailed. As an association, we've continued to support the professional self-catering sector as we've navigated through the pandemic, whilst at the same time, we're facing the biggest challenge our sector has ever faced in terms of short-term let licensing legislation. ASSC membership continues to grow. We currently have over 1,300 members. The team continue to respond to member concerns and queries on an hourly basis. So I'd like to say a huge thanks to Eleanor and Mel for fielding all of this correspondence via multiple channels at all times of the day and night. Financially, as an organisation, the ASSC has historically been very light on reserves. The significant increase in subscriptions plus the Visit Scotland COVID-19 grant has bolstered these reserves and put the association in a very healthy position, which John Mason from Johnson Carmichael will talk to us about in a few minutes. However, it is important to note that while membership has doubled, subsequently costs have also increased, and all this lobbying work costs money. This year, we're continuing to freeze our membership subscriptions in order to continue to support you all through the pandemic. This is largely enabled by our relationship with our incredibly valued partners for business. Talking of which, our business partnerships continue to grow, thanks to, again, the dedicated work of Joyce and Mel. So what are the next steps in terms of the Scottish Government's plans for short-term let licensing? Earlier this month, we welcomed the Cabinet Secretary for Housing removing over-provision from the licensing regime, which was a duplication with planning policy. This recognises that the Scottish Government's objective with the regulations is, in fact, about ensuring health and safety across all short-term lets, not addressing housing issues. We're going to carry on calling for an exemption for registered businesses. We're also going to be asking the Scottish Government to agree on a set of red lines that we deem acceptable if they're to introduce licensing. These include a cap on fees, automatic renewals, neighbour objections being dealt with by existing legislation, pre-arranged inspections if necessary, and centralised control over additional conditions. If you haven't already done so, I'm sorry we keep asking you to do things, but we so value your support. Please do respond to the Scottish Government's Local Government Housing and Planning Committee survey, which closes in just 3 days' time. Details are, of course, on the ASSC news page. The second layer is planning control zones. The City of Edinburgh Council has launched a consultation into designated the entire city as a short-term let control area. Please don't think this won't affect you if you live in rural Perthshire or Highland. Local authorities are already looking at introducing the same planning control zones across Scotland. on the basis that they will solve the housing crisis. Anyway, enough of the doom and gloom. Why are you here, and why are we such a formidable community of professional operators? We're hugely grateful to have been supported by £110,000 worth of funding from Visit Scotland this year to develop a new membership system, as Robert mentioned, and reposition and redevelop Embrace Scotland. This, alongside a robust marketing campaign, is going to be a huge benefit to marketing members and the sector as a whole. So do keep an eye on that. We'll start to be rolling out communications about that in the next few weeks. Time moves on, as Robert says. Robert is stepping down today as chair of the ASSC. Robert's been at the heart of the ASSC for well over a decade, 16 years, in fact. He interviewed me as a candidate for the first chief exec of the ASSC almost 7 years ago. He took a huge leap of faith. I had no idea what I was letting myself in for, nor did he. I remember it as if it was yesterday. I hope that I've delivered what he expected. Thanks, Robert, for everything that you've given to the ASSC and for your years of dedication to the self-catering sector. Really appreciate it. Talking of dedication, the very small ASSC team, supported by Joyce and our PR public affairs consultant, Halogen, continue to work tirelessly for our sector, for which I'm forever thankful. With your continued membership, we're growing an amazing and formidable community. It drives our determination every day to work hard and support you as hardworking professional self-caterers in Scotland. You're most definitely worth it. That, I think, is enough for me right now. Back to Mel.
Thanks very much, Fiona. So just to go through the formalities of the AGM. To go through the board of directors, ASSC directors currently include Robert Kennedy, Tara Scott, vice chair, Christine Ward, Geraldine Hamilton, Les Robinson, Barry Burton, Donald Dunlop, Claire Winskill, Adrienne Carmichael, Nigel Pollard and Naomi Alonso. As per our articles of association, the current board, 1/3 of the current board must step down at this AGM. Robert Kennedy and Christine Ward are stepping down from the board, and our thanks go to them for all their contribution. Geraldine Hamilton and Les Robinson will be stepping down and have expressed a willingness to be re-elected. We also have 3 new director nominations who have expressed a willingness to be elected, and they've all been supported by the board. They are David Nash, Simon Allen and Louise Dickens. So motion 1 is to approve the election and re-election of the directors. I'll ask you to indicate your willingness to propose and second the motion on the poll. Any questions, again, please add those to the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Thank you very much. Moving on to the ASSC accounts, I'd like to hand over to John Mason of Johnson Carmichael Accountants to provide a brief summary of the accounts.
Thanks, Melanie, and good morning, everyone. My name is John Mason. I'm a partner at Johnson Carmichael Accountants based in Glasgow, and we help the ASSC, are delighted to help the ASSC with accounting and related matters. In relation to the accounts to January 2021, the overview is that it has been a very positive year since revenues have grown and costs have been maintained at similar levels. So the overall surplus for the association for the year to January 2021 is over £112,000, which, as Fiona alluded to earlier, is a really helpful surplus to have generated and create some useful reserves given the investment that is going to be made in the current year and looking forward. Drilling into the numbers in a little more detail, the income increased from around 190,000 to around 220,000 in the year, and that is no mean feat given the AGM or the conference that used to sit with the AGM didn't take place in 2020. So the increase in revenues is driven by the very substantial increase in member subscriptions, and that hopefully is a foundation from which the ASSC can build. clearly the £62,000 received from Visit Scotland was hugely useful, and that has also gone a long way to improve the reserves. Just in relation to the costs for the year to January 2021, the costs overall actually reduced, which is a function of a number of factors, not least the way the association was able to reduce its operating costs through the pandemic. There have been some investments made around the investment in PR and some website costs, and some increase in wages during the year, and these will feed through more substantially in the current year. But overall, it's been a very positive year with a substantial surplus that will be carried forward within the reserves of the association. Just to very quickly touch on the balance sheet at January 2021, the balance sheet, as you may have observed, is relatively straightforward. We have some small assets, some computer equipment held at the end of the year. We have some modest amounts of funds due to the association. We have some modest amounts of creditors. That's primarily the HMRC, who are owed some VAT and PAYE at the end of the year, and there is over £170,000 in the bank at the year end, and that underpins the reserves, which you will note on the balance sheet, the net assets of £162,000. So last year, the association had reserves of £50,000. That has been bolstered now to just over 160, and as I say, hopefully lays some firm foundations for the year ahead. That's all I wanted to say in relation to the accounts, but very happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Thanks very much, John. That's hugely beneficial for the AGM. Thank you. So moving on to motion 2, which is to approve the accounts for period from the 1st of February 2020 to the 31st of January 2021. And please indicate your willingness to propose and second the motion on the poll now. Thank you. And motion 3 is to elect Johnson Carmichael as accountants to the end of the financial year 2022 to 23. And please indicate your willingness to propose and second this motion on the poll now. That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Item 4 is to note regarding membership subscriptions. As Fiona mentioned, the membership subscriptions are remaining the same. So the annual membership is staying at £129, which equates to 35p per day. And the marketing package, agency membership, the trade supply membership and Partners for Business membership are all remaining the same. And just finally, to thank all of our Partners for Business trade suppliers. You play a huge part in supporting the ASSC, and we're very much looking forward to sharing some exciting ASSC talks in the coming months. And to our members who are ever increasing in numbers, thank you on behalf of the staff team. We're very much looking forward to working with you and supporting you over the next year. I'm now going to hand over to our new chair, Adrian Carmichael, just to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Mel, and thank you, Robert. I will endeavour to repay your confidence and commit to doing all that I can to assist the ASSC's magnificent team in moving forward purposefully to meet the next wave of challenges that will undoubtedly be coming our way. To quote someone else, we live in interesting times. Some of us may have felt that we could do with a bit less interest and a bit more boredom over the last 2 years. We are where we are, however, and I'm sure that my colleague directors will agree that we are determined to protect and support our membership in navigating any stormy waters ahead. Unfortunately, we must do this without the assistance and encouragement of the 2 directors who are standing down from the board at this AGM. Christine Ward has provided encouragement and thoughtful support to the entire team over all the years that she has served on the board. I know that she will be sorely missed by Fiona as the first to volunteer for additional work, and her sound good sense will be a sad loss at our meetings. I'd like the AGM to record our sincere thanks to Christine and to wish her well in everything she chooses to do in the future. I suspect retirement isn't in Christine's lexicon. Turning to Robert, I'm sure many here will know, and as has already been said, Robert has been closely connected with our association over 2 decades and has been a board member for more than 16 years. It's no exaggeration to state that Robert has probably forgotten more about the ASSC than most of us will ever know. His calm and modest demeanour belies a steely determination to ensure that the Scottish self-catering sector remains at the forefront of high-quality accommodation provision within the tourism industry. In his role as chairman, he has steered the board through a programme of modernisation and will leave us in a strong position to face the next steps in our development. I know that Robert wants to remain in close contact and will monitor our progress closely. I'm personally grateful for his wise counsel and know that the board and membership will want to record our huge thanks to Robert and hope that he can take advantage of having a bit more time to devote to other interests in the future. All that remains is for me to thank everyone for their attendance today and express the hope that we can welcome you all again to the next AGM in 2022. Only time will tell whether it will be virtual, in person, or a blend of both. In any event, I hope 2022 brings us all better things. I now declare the ASSC's 2021 AGM closed and would like to hand over to our Chief Executive, Fiona Campbell, to introduce the Destination Leadership session. Thank you.
Thanks, Adrian. That's fantastic. And welcome on board. You've already been a power of support over the last year, so really delighted that you've taken the reins. So moving on to the possibly more interesting bit, I shouldn't say that, sorry chaps. Destination leadership, responsible tourism for a sustainable future. Scotland's future tourism strategy has the ambition to be the world leader in 21st century tourism. Scotland's Outlook 2030 strategy is reflective of the changing world we live in, our new mindset and approach to how we live and work, and represents the beginning of a bold new approach, putting our communities, our people, our visitors, our businesses, and our environment at the heart of everything we do, and ever more so in a post-pandemic environment. Our current and future challenges are well known to us. However, we've got many opportunities ahead. We've so much to look forward to in delivering success, not only for Scotland's tourism sector, but for our entire nation, creating a better country for us all to live and work in and for the world to visit. We have a vision of every person in Scotland being inspired by tourism and experiencing the benefits of tourism today and for many years to come. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by industry experts today, looking at the challenges and opportunities post-pandemic. Willie Cameron, our host today, is a true friend of the ASSC. He's the founding director of the Cobbs Group of companies who have hotels, coffee shops and retail, all in high amenity tourist areas. And today, Willie is their business development director. Willie's also the owner of Loch Ness Marketing, a media service company, and is a sought after contributor on television and radio on tourism, food and drink matters in Scotland. He's also on the board of the Highlands and Islands Tourism Awards and sits on the National Council of Rural Advisors for the Scottish Government. Willie, it's lovely to have you here today. Over to you.
Absolutely delighted, Fiona, and first and foremost, my good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My congratulations to the ASSC on the wonderful work they have done over the past 20 odd months. Ladies and gentlemen, I trust you're all well and ready for today's ASSC talks. We have an excellent panel covering some of the main tourist areas of Scotland and hopefully giving you some pointers to a route map showing the way forward for tourism post-pandemic in these new extraordinary times ahead. We have today Mr. Ross Macaulay, CEO, South of Scotland DMO. We have Cathy Craig, CEO of Argyll of the Isles, and myself, as Fiona said, Willie Cameron from Loch Ness in the Highlands of Scotland, hosting this event and pulled together expertly by Fiona Campbell and her great team from ASSC, your membership organisation, and as I said, doing a power of work on your behalf. I'm a great believer in that saying from Maya Angelou: you can't know where you are going until you know where you have been. And I think it's extremely important in the future of tourism. This coincides with a very interesting online exhibition called Old Ways, New Roads, Travels in Scotland, 1720 to 1832. It depicts how holidaymakers from England kicked off Scotland's tourism industry. And by the middle of the 18th century, and just a few years after the Battle of Culloden, Scotland's new tourism industry was booming. Names like Sir Walter Scott, Boswell, Johnson, and Queen Victoria all added fuel to the fire, helping to promote Scotland as a must-go-to destination. The tourists then looked for antiquities, the natural heritage, literature, poetry, the romance, the scenery, the flora and fauna, adventure. Ladies and gentlemen, this was the Enlightenment. The tourist had arrived and we were open for business. Fast forward to September the 27th, 2020, 5 months after the pandemic hit these shores. An article in the Herald newspaper read, according to our tourist chiefs, I quote, "COVID-19 has crippled the sector until 2023. Also at the same time, a report by Visit Scotland pins hopes on a reboot of the sector with a more, quote, spirit-lifting experiences combined with rural hospitality. All very well, ladies and gentlemen, but who is going to drive this post-COVID-19? There appears to be power struggles within certain public sector bodies which have bred a culture of command and control. This is an antithesis of what is required. For us, as all in business, we have to take control of our own destiny. We have to look at the bigger picture. We have to rely on our membership organisations to read the signs and create a strategy. We therefore have to create the new enlightenment for the brave new world ahead. We have to cater for a public looking for a safe experience with attention to care and detail in an environment that provides a choice of adventure in comfortable surroundings with access to the best local food and drink, with friendly, welcoming hosts, staff and locals who can relay stories of the area and its DNA, who encourage and endorse conscious travel to visitors and locals alike, and preach sustainability. To enlighten us today, our speakers from their own DMOs will try to interpret and endorse their own strategies for the way forward and to answer your questions. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our first speaker, Mr. Ross Macaulay, CEO, South of Scotland DMO.
Thanks very much, Willie. Brilliant introduction. Hello, everyone. I just want to say as well, to add to Willie's comments, you know, it's such a pleasure and an honour to be invited to participate in the ASSC talk. We're staunch supporters of Fiona, Mel and team, especially when it comes to the short-term let regulation within the south of Scotland. So I really stand shoulder to shoulder with the ASSC on that. As Willie said, I've got the pleasure to head up South of Scotland Destination Alliance. It's a relatively new DMO covering the Scottish borders and Dumfries and Galloway. I came on board this summer, and you know, it's been an interesting time, I think, for all of us, especially for me coming on board into a new organisation. But today, what I thought I'd speak to you about is something that's very close to my heart, and I hope you can see those slides, everyone, which is about really the opportunity for us all as destinations or as businesses, as self-catering businesses, to kind of lower costs and increase effectiveness, which is a lot of what we do in the south of Scotland, you know, with our members. And specifically, you know, what I mean by that, or the opportunity there, is crafting a clear and cohesive and compelling brand strategy. It's essential. I've seen, you know, over the last kind of 15 years working domestically and globally with destination organizations, hotels, restaurants, bars, in the travel and tourism industry, that the brands we have, that we nurture, really drive the perceived value of our product or service, and done well can unlock higher margins and greater market share. It's a kind of, you know, brand should really be a guiding light for us. You know, if you need to make a decision, well, does your brand stand for? Then it should be easier to make a decision. But like everything worthwhile, building a brand, a compelling market position is really difficult. You know, it involves understanding your brand, communicating it to the right target segments, and that's what I'm just going to spend a few minutes talking about today. You'll see here, I've called it the importance of insight. So to get to a great brand, there's a few steps that we need to go through. There's diagnosis, there's strategy, and then there's execution. Now, I would say kind of 95% of the businesses that, you know, I work with now and in the past kind of start with product, or marketeers start with promotion. So that's, you know, kind of, you know, what influencer should I engage is the conversation. But my point today is there's a lot of utility in drawing back a little bit, going further up that process and really looking at how you define a great strategy for either your destination, which is the process we use, or for your business. And great strategy is built on, I think, three things, and you'll see it there in the middle: segmentation, targeting, and positioning. And this kind of holy trinity, this STP, you know, to focus on it, to get it right, makes the execution of what we do so much more plausible and so much more effective. So we should really start with this, and I'm just going to spend a few minutes kind of going through what I mean by segmentation, targeting, and positioning at a destination level, and hopefully some insights and frameworks you can use with your own businesses. So STP, the foundational strategy, start off with segmentation. So the process we use in South of Scotland, and we work with our businesses to use, is, you know, before you even get to developing product and talking about marketing yourself, firstly, you know, define your market. So who is it that's in your available market? So, you know, how widely or narrowly that we define that is a choice for us. You know, for example, in the south of Scotland, we define our market as, you know, anyone in the UK who would consider taking a rural break or a rural holiday. For you and your businesses, that could be, you know, a narrower definition. It could be your market is families from the Central Belt, or it could be, you know, adventure seekers from the north of England. But what I find that is useful to do is to define that whole pie. Why is it useful? Because it avoids the dreaded average. When we're working with businesses, people often talk about, you know, an average consumer or a customer, which doesn't really exist except kind of in our mind's eye. So we try and kind of understand that market a little bit better, and also understand the fact that all customers are not equal. Some are more important than others, and that affects our profitability and our product mix. So step one of the STP is the segmentation. What is the total box that we've got to play in? Then once we've defined that total market, the next stage, and it's a linear process for us, is targeting. Okay, this is the total market. Who do we want to target? And Michael Porter, who's a Harvard professor, put it much better than I could, but I'm a big believer in this. In fact, this quote is up on my wall in the office. The essence of strategy is choosing what not to do. And too often we see destinations and businesses trying to be all things to all people, and it never ever works. Once you try and spread yourself too thinly, ultimately you become part of the background noise, and you don't really have that ability to cut through and differentiate yourself. So it's really super important when we're targeting to make those decisions and actually consciously decide not to target the whole market, but focus in on different segments. And that's really, in our pie analogy, is if the total market is the pie, the targeting is a strategic choice to say, all right, there's a couple of segments within this market that I'm going to go after and build my kind of product and service around. That's not to say, and this comes up a lot in my conversations, that we would ever refuse business from anyone who's not in a target segment. But the strategic choice of going after a target segment is a really useful one because it gives us more chance of cutting through. So when we're choosing our target segments, we define what I call a segment portrait. So, let's say if a market is anyone in the UK who would consider taking a rural holiday, then the different target segments within that market could be metropolitan families, it could be older travelers, it could be adventurous families. And so we will decide which ones to strategically target and then build up an impression of who they are. So who are they? What do they think about travel? What is it they currently do, or where do they go on holiday? What turns them off? What turns them on to a holiday or a break in the UK? And in the south of Scotland, we've just conducted some recent research that goes into great detail on those segments, on their portrait, who they are, what they think, and the levers that we can pull in order to get more of them to come to the destination. But equally, this can work at a business level. So we've decided what a market is, targeting. Okay, we're starting to make that strategic choice of targeting the right segments. And once we target the segments, a useful framework that we have is to plot our product or experience against those segments. So to say, okay, at destination level, or it could be at business level, who are we targeting? What has appeal? What do we have available? And then plot those on a matrix like this, which then helps us define the experience that we really need to kind of double down on from a reputational content and PR perspective. So we know that we're talking about things that are actually going to move the needle for people. That brings us on to P, the positioning. So we talked about segmentation, we talked about targeting segments. Positioning is the third step of the strategic process, which is once you've decided on your target segments, what do you say to them to convince them to come to your business or to come to your destination? So a really good way or framework I've found that really helps people kind of understand this, how they can position is by appealing to human instinct. So we're all governed by biology. It kind of, we talk about life cycles and we talk about things going viral, and we talk about the kind of terminology influences our business thinking because it's so fundamental to who we are as human beings that we kind of make choices based on this. And you can apply this to positioning of your destination or your business. So there's 4 kind of key areas of biology that motivate human action. You've got the brain, the heart, you've got the gut, and then you've got kind of status. How do you make yourself attractive to attracting a potential mate? These are 4 biological imperatives that we have in positioning. So if you appeal to the brain, a brand like Google appeals to the brain. It answers your questions, it makes sense of information, it points you in the right direction. If you're a heart-based brand or business, that's about people coming together. It's about the emotion and feeling and sharing. A brand like Disney is a great brand for the heart. If you're a gut brand, that's really this kind of sense of I want more for less. So I want great value for money. I want to feel that I've got a good deal. So something like Amazon is a great kind of example of a gut brand positioning. And then status, or how do I make myself more attractive to get a potential mate, which is a age-old biological imperative. You have status-orientated brands like Tesla. So if you buy a Tesla, that kind of says, you know, I'm affluent, I'm part of the global elite, I believe in sustainability, therefore it enhances my status. So this is a lens by which we look through in the South, and when we work with businesses, to say, well, okay, for your individual brand, what kind of human instinct do you want to appeal to? And kind of going through this process and thinking, well, we're about the heart, we're about the head, or we're about more for less, or we're about status, can help to kind of unveil, well, how should I then speak to my target segments? And then once we have that, a framework and tool that's really, really useful is what I call the benefit ladder. So in terms of positioning to a segment that we're targeting, we have a ladder of benefits, starting with product features, product benefits, customer benefit, and emotional benefits. So the idea is the further up the ladder you can get when you're positioning your destination or your business, then the more impactful you're going to be. So at the bottom rung, it just says product, that's the name of your product, or you know, or product features, that's kind of what does your product deliver. If you can kind of go up that ladder and start not to talk about who you are or what you deliver, but the benefit that you bring to a customer or the emotional benefit you can bring, we as a destination and as businesses have a far greater chance of achieving greater market share and greater margin. So an example in our case would be, I could say, you know, a product, let's say I run a self-catering, so I'd call it Rossi's Self-Catering based in Selkirk. So I could just promote the fact that, okay, there's Rossi's Self-Catering in Selkirk. That's a kind of product kind of positioning. But if I moved up the benefit ladder, you know, if I went to customer benefit or emotional benefit, I would say that, okay, I've created a space where families can come together and share lifelong memories, okay? And so moving up that benefit ladder in terms of our positioning, getting away from just that product description, really, really helps in cutting through and attracting those target segments. And this to me is critically important when building destination or building the business, the critical importance of visionary storytelling. The brands that are going to thrive in the coming years in travel and tourism are the ones with a purpose beyond profit. You know, Willie's already talked about sustainability. We've got COP26 coming up. People want, they want to know what you do, but they also want to understand why you do something. And the businesses and destinations that can tap into this are going to command a higher than average market share and higher than average margins. And this importance of visionary storytelling is really super important as well with the proprietors of the self-catering and hotels, restaurants that we work with in the South, because as the head of these businesses, you need to kind of embrace this and become that. Now, I'm not saying we're all going to become Richard Branson, but look at him as an example of how to kind of tell a story and engage people in what we're doing beyond just the product attributes. So that's my little spiel there. At the South of Scotland Destination Alliance, we really believe in building good strategy based on insight. And so we go through this STP process, this segmentation, targeting, positioning process at destination level and also with our member businesses. And I hope there's something in here that might have sparked an idea or given you something to think about. And that's me.
Willie, you're on mute.
You're on mute, Willie. I've sent Willie to sleep with my strategic rationale. Oh, no, there you go, Willie.
Can you hear me now?
Got you.
Can you hear me? You can hear me now, yes?
We can hear you, Willie, yes.
Aye, that's good. Anyway, sorry, folks. Yeah, Ross, that was an excellent insight into as far as branding, and there must be organisations out there and business out there that might want to look at rebranding. And undoubtedly, as far as marketing is concerned, the power of social media is still out there. Things like Instagram, engaging influencers, bloggers and vloggers. But your last part regarding the critical importance of storytelling, it's extremely appropriate, because next year is the signature year, is the year of storytelling as far as Visit Scotland's signature year is concerned. So again, that is something that we all have to engage in, because the people, the staycation, the new visitors to Scotland are wanting to know all about the country. They want to know all about the area they're staying in. They want to know about wee Johnny and the Croft down the road. They want to know the DNA, as I said earlier on. So it's extremely important. Regarding your the brands that you instigated there, as far as good examples, I now know what I must do. I must improve my Google Analytics. I must watch Fantasia, buy my beer from Amazon, and drive a Tesla. So as far as that's concerned, Ross, thank you very, very much indeed. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to hand over to Kathy Craig, the CEO of Argyll and the Isles. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Willie. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak to you today. Hopefully my presentation will follow on from what Ross was talking about in terms of the positioning of the destination. And I want to take some time to really do a bit of a pause and a think about our visitors and the perspective that they are coming from as they consider their travel for next year. There's no doubt that it's a mixed picture. So certainly in Argyll, from the businesses that I've been speaking to, some have had a great latter summer season, extending further than normal, and have strong bookings for next year. However, we mustn't be complacent. A recent survey conducted by Sky in the last couple of months, over 2,000 people, 50% of them were looking to return to international travel. That's 50% of folk who are waiting for the borders to open, the testing regime to be reduced, and for the ability to travel abroad again. A number of businesses, catering businesses, have very strong bookings for next year, and we've had a fantastic summer last year in Scotland. It would definitely help with our staycationers, solidify how fantastic Scotland is as a holiday location. But again, 34% of those surveyed recently said they would staycation again, and certainly the forward bookings that have been mentioned would support that view. But a lot of people are hedging their bets also. Remember the visitor behaviours that we had at the start of last year, where customers were making multiple bookings and cancelling at the last minute, and I'm sure that's not a landscape that any of you want to return to. It's a nightmare for you to manage. In a post-COVID area, the challenge that we all have is that despite the individual business challenges that you're all facing, of staffing issues, regulatory issues, VAT, there's a whole host of troublesome waters coming our way. It's likely that the visitor demands will be higher, not less. And that's because after 2 years of a reduction in international travel opportunities, maybe not getting a holiday because they left it too late to book and then found that Scotland was full, the visitor demands will be are likely to be significant. And there's great research that's been done by UK Inbound, Visit Scotland, and any number of economic agencies that point to the different ways in which we need to consider our visitor in order to make sure that they come. So if you've put that hard work into your brand and into your marketing, if you've invested in your local destination marketing organisation and they're helping to bring that visitor to Scotland, it's imperative that you then deliver a really excellent visitor experience. And I wanted to focus a moment on what that visitor is expecting and give you some of the insights. You may know some of this already, but now is the time to just reconnect with our visitors. So what do we know about them? So Ross has mentioned some of these things and Willie's picked up Tomorrow's visitors are really looking to connect to Scotland for the emotional benefits that only Scotland can deliver on. Wellness and nature is likely to be a huge facet of that Scotland has to offer over other locations. And what Scotland is unique for is its dramatic landscapes, its culture, its connections, its history, and the notion of escapism. Coming up the ranks are new trends in visitors about why people want to travel, and in particular take rural holidays rather than international holidays, not least of all from a health perspective. Staycations is becoming more and more of a thing as more people work from home in desk jobs. They are wanting to combine the luxury of being able to work from a laptop anywhere that has good Wi-Fi with an opportunity to hang out with the family. And so we're starting to see many more trends around individuals wanting to go away with the family, work, say, 8 o'clock till 3 o'clock, and then go do things in the late afternoon and in the early evening. So I think we can see from some of the trends that are coming up, our nighttime economy is going to become quite important to visitors going forward. Volunteering and experiences are building in terms of visitor trends. Willie mentioned, it's not enough now that we want to sort of go and see a couple of castles and hang out in our fantastic landscape. People are wanting to get connected to the place that they are visiting. They're wanting to understand its DNA and get involved with that. We've seen some fantastic examples of how organisations have adapted to this. On Bute, for example, Mount Stewart, who have a lot of self-catering accommodation, they have been putting on little trips to the farm to watch the lambing, to get involved in some of the farm work. We've seen green businesses putting together green boxes that are then distributed around the island with locally grown vegetables taking off, and visitors actually getting involved in that activity. And of course, as Willie said, it's about connecting your location with the actual destination that you're in. So I think it's worth taking a moment to just really think about those visitors. Gallup, that you may know, who are a huge poll organisation, they've done a lot of survey work for decades, and the most recent surveys of workers show that in Western Europe, 34% of 1 million people, workers that were surveyed, said that they were operating in a place of stress and worry. So not knowing what's going to happen, we've got rising gas prices, we've got job uncertainty, we've got young people who can't get work in a postgraduate scenario, and yet I know that the tourism sector cannot get workers, so we're in a bit of a perfect storm. So the visitor experience that we need to deliver is against a very troubled backdrop, and it's worth remembering that we might need to up our ante if we want to win these visitors over what's inevitably going to be cheap European holidays, because they will want to fight hard to win back the visitors that wanted to stay in the UK this year. And so I wanted to share with you some examples of things that I've either personally experienced, little wow factors, small things, and inevitably because of the context that you were all delivering in, these are relatively low cost things, because I know that's important to drive down your costs whilst delivering an exemplar visitor experience. And it touches on some of the things that Ross talked about in terms of what do you want to be known for? What's your brand about? Are you a heart person, or are you all about the sex appeal? What is it that you're actually offering? Some of these examples are the best ways in which I've seen some Argyle businesses in particular really be exemplar, and some couple of examples from my personal journeys as well. So just picking a few out really, I'm going to start with the emotional triggers, and this is very much in the space that Ross was talking about, the heart. So many years ago when my children were young, we chose to holiday in Wales, and I have an enduring memory of entering a self-catering cottage to the most wonderful smell, and on the table was a Welsh barrabrith. Forgive me if anyone's Welsh and I've mispronounced that. Barrabrith is a local bread. They've made it for centuries in Wales, and the accommodation provider had cooked it in the property and then left it, and the smell absolutely permeated the cottage. And I've never forgotten that, and the kids have never forgotten it. And it created an emotional bond with that individual self-catering place. And in fact, we went back for 4 years after that. And I credit that to that one moment. The destination is wonderful as well, but that connection with the self-catering property was an emotional one. Emotional triggers are based on sight, smell, sound, and senses. So when you're thinking about your visitor journey and your visitor experience, how could you create emotional triggers in that space that you are in? I had the fortunate to stay with Fiona and Campbell Cottages, and she left a cake for us, and that was just a wonderful surprise. Don't worry if you're not a baker. I think there's other ways in which you can trigger those things. Can't not talk about climate change because it's the week of COP26, just travelled through Glasgow this morning, and we're all ready for it. But the important thing about the environmental is this is not just a tick box exercise anymore. Visitors are wanting to understand how specifically you are supporting the green journey. And yes, they do expect you to be leading the way. And we're talking about something far beyond reuse your towels. So some of the best examples that I've seen are self-catering accommodation that offers bamboo toothbrushes, for example, to take away. And they take a slight educational role. So they will put little signs up around the cottage saying how they are reducing their own carbon, how they are reducing energy costs, and inviting the visitor to take part in that journey, giving people plastic tubs to carry their food around to reduce plastic waste. So these small things can make a big difference, but tell your story about why you're doing it and why you think it's important. If you want to take that one step further, some leading businesses have carbon offset schemes. So what they're doing is they're buying into these schemes. It's actually not that expensive, and you can carbon offset your visitors' journey. There are a number of schemes available in Scotland. And of course, there's the Visit Scotland Green scheme that you can sign up for as well. And then you can use that as a competitive advantage. So Eco Nature Holidays in Argyll actually use that as a marketing point, and they're appealing to that emotional connection with visitors wanting to understand how their holiday can contribute positively. So that business there is actually, it's actually a carbon positive business. So they've done everything that they can to make sure that they are not damaging the environment in any way. And they start a very gentle conversation about how food choices can help with the environmental journey that we're all on. Another example that I've seen that's really worked fantastically well is the good old-fashioned guide that we leave in the accommodation. And there's a wide range of quality of these guides, and it's probably something that you've probably not had time to have a look at in a long time. But the really smart businesses are making those guides personal. So what they are doing is moving away from the old sort of fashioned way of having something on the middle of the coffee table. And they're actually putting something in place where they're personalizing it to whoever is staying in the accommodation. So if it's a family, it's got family things. If it's a couple, it's got couple things. So it's actually really tailoring that guide to the area, to the restaurants, to the walks, to the needs of that individual family, and making it personal. So a welcome letter, a welcome card goes a long way. Naming the individual or just popping in to say hello on that first day goes a long way. Looking at the emotional connection again, if you're a dog friendly business, then it's how can you be dog friendlier? And again, I've traveled extensively with my dog, and I've spoken to a lot of different businesses that do open up the doors for dogs, and things like the provision of dog bowls, a dog bed, dog toys, even some dog treats. Again, these are really small, low-cost things that signal when you step through the door, all right, this space has been geared for me and it's been set up with my needs in mind. And it starts to create a different relationship between the visitor and the environment that they spend their time in. Another really excellent example that I saw recently is there's a huge surge in the interest in rewilding and actually being a positive contributor to the planet. And I've seen self-catering cottages leave things like wild seeds and invite visitors to go spread them and give them some information about where they can spread them, why it's important, and to get them involved in that. I've even seen recently an accommodation provider who invites their visitors to do a little bit of gardening, but helps them by giving them some of the tools and telling them why it's important to invest a little bit of time. Great activity to get the kids involved with, and our children are being taught about the environment and nature at school and the responsibility that we have. It gives them an outlet for that and gets the parents involved. Now, I know over the summer in particular, the challenges that tourism industry has had with getting workers in its restaurants and bars has really affected the visitor experience. And certainly a lot of our members have talked about this is a problem. You know, we're bringing people, we're giving them a good accommodation experience, but then locally they've been let down because they've not been able to get a meal. And I've experienced this myself over the summer. But again, it's being innovative, and innovation is the only way we're going to get through the troubled waters ahead. And I've seen some really excellent examples of, rather than just accepting that situation and hoping that the visitor is forgiving about it, of actually hooking up with a local restaurant to think differently, create picnic baskets that can be collected. I heard of a really excellent example with Sail Scotland recently, where they launched a shore to ship campaign where you could pre-order on the website and then it would be delivered contactless to the boat. So it's thinking a little bit differently and collaboratively and saying, if the visitor experience might be damaged by some of the challenges that the sector is going through, what can we do differently? Where can we hook into one another and collaborate so that the visitor who's booked their UK holiday against this context of worry and about what's going to happen, they get a really magical experience where things are delivered and made easy for them. Getting your listings working for you is fundamental. So if your DMOs have done a fantastic job, Visit Scotland, of enticing people, getting people interested in Scotland and what it has to offer, and it's more than the landscape. If you're listing, wherever you're listed, on a booking platform, on your DMO, on your own website, is hard work, you will turn your visitors away. And again, the quality of listings is a huge range, and it's one of those things that as a business owner that probably slips down your list of priorities, particularly if you're battling with regulatory change and staff issues. But now is the time, when you get a little bit of respite over the winter, to go check, where are you listed, and is that listing accurate and up to date, and does it show your best self? We've had a couple of members submit photographs of their property where we've had to go back and say that doesn't showcase your property to its best advantage. So really think about tapping into the expertise that sits within your destination marketing organisation, that sits within Visit Scotland and the advisory services that they offer. Make the listing tell the story of what your destination is all about and what kind of friendly are you. Because if you make it hard for people, if visitors have to pick through a list to find out whether you take docs or not, then you're turning people away. The visitor planning window digitally is about 30 minutes. If you don't get them in the first couple of minutes, they've probably moved on and gone somewhere else. And then the planning ahead piece and how you tap into your destination marketing organisation. They work really hard on your behalf, and your membership that you invest in DMOs goes straight back into promotion of the destination, which means you don't have to do that. All you have to do is compete against other accommodation providers. But you need to have a two-way relationship with your DMO to really rise above the competition. So linking to your DMO that you're a member of from your own website and your own marketing, and making sure that you're linked back the way and that your accommodation is showcased in its best light. It's a two-way relationship. It's a bit like a gym membership. If you pay the gym every month but you don't go, you won't see any results. It needs to be a collaborative working relationship. So if you are a member of a DMO, get involved with them, talk to them, give them feedback, help them understand what's happening locally, help them understand your destination, give them the information. They will then do the hard work of marketing that and making your property and your destination shine. But you need to work hand in hand with them. So I hope I've shared just a few examples of things that I've either personally witnessed or heard of or seen firsthand that basically are little wow things. None of these things are very expensive, but they, when you add to them together, the sum of the small things really makes an impactful difference on the visitor experience. And hand in hand, if we get the marketing right, as Ross said, and get the brand really solid, and we get the staycationers to come back to Scotland and enjoy everything we've got to offer, let's wow them by putting in place a number of small things that collectively leave them with a fantastic impression of Scotland, so they wouldn't want to go anywhere else. Thank you.
Well, Willie.
Kathy,
There you are.
thank you very, very much indeed, Kathy. That was, as far as the audience was concerned out there today, that was an excellent insight and advice. And certainly, I think the workcation market is a huge market that is going to burgeon as the rest of this year goes on. And I think the things that you pointed out there, as far as experiential tourism is concerned, definitely the emotional triggers, they win a lot of support. Expert local guides, easy access to areas, environmentally friendly, and I think the bespoke info, absolutely first class. So Kathy, very many thanks, and also to Ross too. So prior to going on to I'll just wind up, prior to going on to the Q&A, which Fiona is going to take over. Many, many thanks to you all for attending today's ASSC talks. I trust, like myself, you've been enlightened to take your businesses on the journey ahead. And to finish, we have to protect our own little enclave, as the both speakers mentioned. COP26 is just a motion away, and we've got to protect our own little enclave and the planet. If not, we could lose the lot. So my mantra for today is to rewind, rebuild, rethink, and rewild. And in the words of Robert Burns, but pleasures are like poppies spread. You seize the flower, the bloom is shed, or like a snowfall in the river, a moment white, then gone forever. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, ASSC is a collection of like-minded sectorial businesses and individuals who, in the words of Van Morrison and the team at ASSC, will take you from the dark end of the street to the bright side of the road. Ladies and gentlemen, many thanks and stay safe. And I hand you over to Fiona, who will handle the Q&A from yourselves. Many thanks to our speakers as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Willie, so much as ever. I know we're virtual again this year, but we can't do an AGM without you, I'm afraid. So thank you so much. And thank you so much, Ross and Kathy. Amazing insights. Ross, it was really interesting to get your explanation of that strategy, which I have to admit I hadn't really thought about, but I really, really appreciated hearing that view. And also, Kathy, that emotional connection piece is just so important, and you've given us some really good ideas to take away with us. There's an interesting question from Alistair Danter up at Sky Connect, actually, which is pertinent to you, Kathy. There's some really good initiatives here for businesses to consider. How do you engage with local businesses to get them to take these ideas on board? And how successful are you with the business engagement? What are the main barriers to effective business engagement as the local DMO? I know you're fairly new in this particular role, but you've got any number of years of experience. So what's your thought on that?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Alistair. It's hard. Let's not beat around the bush. It takes time, and the main barrier that businesses don't engage is time. Everybody's time poor. I think I'm a big believer in demonstrate what good looks like, and the more examples you can show, the more examples you can point to, gives people ideas to copy. Because I think that's the challenge for businesses is, it's all very well to say, you know, you need to innovate, but what specifically, where specifically, and when do I get time to do that when I'm, you know, busy running the actual business? And I think the challenge is if we don't do this, then we're relying on the bubble of staycation that, you know, we don't know if that bubble's going to burst or not. So I think it's about conversation. I think it's about finding those examples and pointing to what good looks like. And I think it's about just keep going. I have for many years have a view of work with the willing, and the rest will either fall away or come along. So I think that find those one or two businesses that you can work with collaboratively. Try things. Don't be afraid to try things. Everybody is a beginner the first time you do something. And then talk about what do you learn. I've given a talk before, which I won't present now, about somewhere close to where I was born in Manchester, Ramsbottom, who started with, I think Fiona said this before, a random pie weekend where they had 3 stalls outside the local church. It's now a festival that happens once a year pre-COVID that brings 5,000 visitors to this tiny little village in Lancashire who spend an inordinate amount of money in the local shops. What was the secret to success? Not really the product, but it was about the collaboration, about understanding the market and learning year on year and year and growing it. So I think it's find the collaborators, work with the willing, find the good examples and copy, steal the best ideas. There's no point in trying to come up with new stuff all the time. It's too much hard work, and keep going would be my advice. How successful are we at it? Some businesses are superb at engaging because they ignore the barriers. Some businesses give up too early and they just do what they've always done, and we've done it for 25 years and it works for us, and that's fine as well. But if we're going to compete, we need to be thinking a little bit differently going forward.
Wise words as ever. I suppose our difficulty right now is that we don't really know what's coming in front of us. We've always kind of worked out what's gone before us and made judgments based on that, but now we just don't know. And Willie was saying earlier that in his neck of the woods up in Drumnadrochit in Inverness, it's absolutely mobbed still, which is just unheard of. So we all need to kind of look at this new extraordinary, as Willie quite rightly puts it. Ross, I've got another question from the other side, is how should I be approaching marketing for my business in 2022? Have you got any top tips for businesses to take away in this uncertain world?
Yeah, I think, Fiona, I'd probably just double down on what I said before, is 90% of the businesses I work with go straight to promotion or tweaking a product. 10% take a step back and think, who am I trying to target? What segments make sense to me, and what am I saying to those segments? And it's the ones who take a step back, look at that, that long term are far more successful, because each year they're building year on year rather than just a kind of spurt of activity now and again. So I would say that's the key thing for me in an uncertain world, is to kind of understand your customer and who you are. Secondly, I would say we know that customer, as Kathy pointed out really well, customer trends are changing. So, you know, if you look at what people want now, I think they want 3 things. First is they want to experience a new place, because everyone knows their own backyard pretty well by now after the last 18 months. So people are much more willing to explore. Secondly, sustainability. It's been a kind of constant beating drum over the last decade, but now it's actually important. So Booking.com did a survey last year, 69,000 people, 31 countries. 73% of them will choose more sustainable accommodation. I was on with TripAdvisor yesterday, their kind of London team. They actually said, yes, 75% of their traffic now is would spend more on sustainable accommodation. So that's just now an economic imperative. And the third of those 3 things I think is changing, Fiona, is getting away from it all, you know, especially for those of us that live in a city, the idea of space, of air, of greenery, which many of us may take for granted in our own products, but actually extolling the virtues of that and promoting that effectively has a massive, I think, impact. So experience new places, sustainability, and getting away from it all are the three themes, I think, for 2022.
I think you're absolutely right. And I suppose in amongst that is the kind of concept of agility. Don't assume that our market will stay the same as last year. It might be different next year. So just keep an eye on the trends and that sort of thing. On that sort of subject, Kathy, do we think we're going to have the same level of staycations next summer? What's going to happen? Or is everybody desperate to get to Portugal?
Well, look, you know, my crystal ball's no better than anyone else's. I mean, there's certainly strong forward bookings across all the destinations in Scotland. It's not everyone's experience, but certainly in Argyll, businesses are telling me that their July and August is full, but we know we can't trade on July and August alone. And the other challenge, of course, that brings, of course, is infrastructure, which is becoming a bit of a swear word in a lot of our rural destinations. So I think it's still very volatile. My personal view, Spain, Portugal, Greece, they're going to fight really hard to pull back those really important UK markets. My own international holiday in 2 weeks' time has fallen by £150 since I booked it a week ago. So they're going to bite hard into our market, and there will be some people who want the sand under their toes in a way that we can't provide that. Equally, there will be some people who do not ever want to go abroad again. I think we just don't know, Fiona. I think we don't know is the real answer. And when we look at this from a Visit Scotland point of view, when we look at this from an economic point of view, it's a very mixed bag, and we need to be really careful we don't fall into a trap of, well, let's not market then because our forward bookings are looking pretty good for next year. I think that's folly, and I think we will come unstuck, and we might see a spike in last minute cancellations. So you might want to rethink your cancellation policies for next year.
Absolutely. We did a whole ASSC talk on that very subject. So, and it's a minefield. One last question, the responsible tourism piece. This is a question for David. How can DMOs ensure meaningful tourism engagement with communities? And that's a really good question, isn't it? Ross, do you want to go for that?
Yeah, so I mean, hugely important, I think, and also just want to make the point that sustainability goes further than carbon offsetting, right? So I think what you're saying there is, Fiona, sustainability is about a key measure for us south of Scotland is, you know, out of every pound spent on tourism, how much of that pound remains in the local community. The way we do it is we partner with the best, and so the south of Scotland is a UNESCO biosphere. Who've been running for 15, 20 years, Mel will correct me, very successfully. A big part of our destination, they have 6 pillars that they've based their success on. So we're working very closely with them to kind of roll out, you know, that thinking and that approach to the wider destination based on the success that they've had. And it's a really kind of a fruitful partnership that we're forming there to kind of build on what they've done. But it's, yeah, like I said, it's not just about that carbon emitting, it's community aspect.
Kathy, anything from you on that one?
Yeah, and I think where it's biting in the rural locations is on that infrastructure piece. So I think there's a lot of demand being placed on local authorities to, you know, address that issue. But I think the challenge with that is that, you know, they've got monies that they need to be spent in all sorts of different places. I think we've got to be a bit more innovative. You know, how can we work at a community level to put the infrastructure in place that might be needed? And I think, you know, the bit that we can do something about more readily is spread our visitors, spread them across out with the main summer season, spread them across the area. You know, let's not compete south of Scotland, Argyll, Highlands. Let's share the visitors that are coming, because this is a Team Scotland job that we've got on our hands, and let's encourage them to enjoy all that Scotland has to offer and come back and go to a different area and spread the load across all of our fantastic locations. We've still got the Golden Triangle going on with our visitors, our international visitors. We've still got, the Skye Fairy Pools scenario and other scenarios. North Coast 500 is having infrastructure challenges due to the success. What can we do to work together to spread the visitors across our fantastic country? There are so many great places to visit. We need to work harder to bring people out with the season and across all of the destinations of Scotland.
Positive as ever. So just to finish up on that note of positivity, because I know Kathy, you're in high demand today, you're off to do another presentation shortly, and I've got to go and talk to an MSP about short-term let licensing. So I'd just like to say thank you so much, Willie. Thanks so much for, as ever, being a fabulous host. Kathy, Craig and Ross Macaulay, thank you so much. Thank you to everyone that came along today, and appreciate your support, and we're here to help with everything else. So take care, have a fabulous afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thanks.